Hello, welcome to Edupedia World Video. Not long after the American Revolution, there was French Revolution in 1789. The French rebelled against monarchy and also killed their own king as the English did back in the 17th century. It was King Louis XVI. They openly declared independence from the Roman Catholic Church and religion in general. France was the first country in history to officially prohibit and abolish Christianity. It was the time of great chaos, wars and massacres all over France and its borders with other countries. The monarchy was abolished, and they issued the so-called Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen in 1789, and the first French Constitution in 1791, similar to the American Constitution, although it was changed several times in the coming decades. The revolution ended in 1799. It was the moment of liberating from the Roman Catholic Church supremacy. The same idea spread over Europe, and almost all countries of the world, one by one, abolished monarchy and religion, and proclaimed the so-called democratic republics. That is why most of the modern-day countries in the world are republics. However, a French general, Napoleon Bonaparte, took the throne of France the very same year, in 1799, and became the new ruler of France. Napoleon was proclaimed an emperor in 1804, thus forming the French Empire and starting a new world conquest. Napoleon conquered the whole Western Europe and even a part of Southeastern Europe by the year 1810. He wanted to conquer the rest of Europe too, and headed toward Russia, but suffered total defeat in the Battle of Borodino in 1812 by Russian General Kutuzov. After that he lost another two battles by coalition of European kingdoms, such as Russia, Austria and England. The first one was the Battle of Leipzig in Germany, or the Battle of Nations in 1813, and then the final defeat in the Battle of Waterloo in 1815, after which he was sent to exile to South Atlantic island St. Helena, while the French Empire was reduced to its former borders from the times of revolution. Nonetheless, the revolutions and wars throughout Europe and the rest of the world did not stop. On the contrary, the 19th century was the age of revolutions. The greatest wave of revolutions, though unsuccessful, occurred in 1813 and especially during the 1848. It was the age when many countries, primarily in South America and Europe, gained independence, so that almost all of the modern-day countries were formed, with the exception of few African and Asian countries that did it during the next century. 1848 was also the year when the ideology of communism emerged, which slowly spread to the rest of the world, all the way to China. Founded by notorious philosophers Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. Communists had almost the same goals as French revolutionists, to abolish monarchy and religion, and form their own world empire. There were minor differences between them, but they all came from the same source, only having different names. It was also the time when the ideology of racism emerged, as well as many other wrong, dangerous and false political, social, religious, scientific and philosophy systems appeared. In the middle of the 19th century, some scientists devised a theory which was supposed to prove that God does not exist. They did the same thing military revolutionists wanted to do, to abolish religion and proclaim secular states of republic, destroying everyone who disagreed with them. The theory proposed was called the Darwin's theory of evolution, which changed the course of history because of its devastating effects on humanity. And finally, the 19th century was also the age of discoveries, inventions, and greatest technology advancement. Technology boomed during this period, but also contributed to creating of weapons of mass destruction, especially during the first half of the 20th century. World population reached 1 billion people in the 19th century and started increasing abruptly from that time, though again it was much reduced during the forthcoming world wars. During the whole early modern age period, as it is called by contemporary historians, and especially during the 18th and 19th century, every part of the world was colonized mainly by Europeans, or better said, it was conquered by European rulers under the guidance and authority of the Roman papacy. Actually, it would be more precise to say that they were either under the guidance and authority of the Roman Catholic Church, or the opponents of Roman popes, or the restored Roman Empire, known under different names. They colonized and conquered even the greatest ancient non-European civilizations, such as China and India. Concerning the Chinese Empire, it endured much longer than European monarchies, and did not experience any similar revolution until the 19th century and permanent colonization by European settlers and conquerors. After the famous Ming dynasty, the new Qing or Manchu dynasty came to the throne and ruled from the 17th until beginning of the 20th century, when monarchy was abolished and the Chinese Republic formed under the influence of Westerners. The same event occurred in India. The Mughal Empire collapsed due to new Indian dynasty arising, which formed the Maharajah Empire, though it existed even during the reign of Mughals. The Maharajah Empire lasted from the 17th until the 19th century, when it was finally conquered by British colonizers, the same way China was. Indians lost their independence and became a part of the British World Empire, known as the British Raj. India won back their independence after the Second World War. Both world wars at the beginning of the 20th century were the result of a world domination race between two sides. One side were the so-called Central Powers, Germany, or the former Holy Roman Empire, Austria-Hungary, formed in 1887, Bulgaria, and Ottoman Turkish Empire, which was reduced to its modern-day territories after being defeated by Serbs and other Balkan nations during the Balkan Wars from 1912 to 1913. The opponents of Central Powers were the so-called Allied Powers, or Entente: France, the United Kingdom of Great Britain, Russia, Serbia, Italy, USA, Greece, and many others. The war started in 1914, when Austrians, Hungarians, and Germans attacked Serbia in southeastern Europe. Although much stronger and more numerous, they were defeated by Serbs in several battles, but prevailed in 1915. They were successful in the beginning, but were eventually defeated by Allied forces, especially when many countries of the world joined Allied forces in 1915 and in 1917. The Central Powers tried to gain advantage by sending communist revolutionists into Russia in 1917 from Germany. Communists led by Vladimir Lenin killed the imperial Romanov dynasty and took control of Russia. That event is called the October Revolution. Although Russia was stopped that way, the Allied forces eventually defeated Central Powers. The war ended in 1918, and they signed a Treaty of Versailles the next year. Some of the most important battles of the war were the Battle of Tannenberg, the Battle of Marne, the Battle of Verdun, and the Battle of Somme. The German Russian, Ottoman, and the Habsburg Austria-Hungary empires collapsed, while many new countries over Europe and Asia emerged. The so-called Allied forces were mainly the opponents of the Roman papacy, which wanted to have revenge for their defeat. So after preparation during the next 2 decades, they initiated the Second World War in 1939, which was actually only a continuance of the First World War. The Allied powers were again the United Kingdom of Britain, France, Russia, USA, and many others all over the world, while their opponents, guided by Roman Catholic Church, the so-called Axis powers, were Germany, Italy, and Japan, as 3 main forces, and many others all over the world, including Hungary, Bulgaria, and Croatia. The leaders of Axis powers were the German dictator Adolf Hitler, the Italian dictator Benito Mussolini, and the Japanese Emperor Hirohito. Germans were also known as Nazis, and Italians as fascists, and they claimed to have been superior human race, superior than all other nations of the world. That was the 19th century ideology of racism. Both the Nazis of Hitler and the Axis powers on one side, and the Allied forces, or the United Nations as they were called, on the other side, were competing among each other for world domination. That is the main cause of both world wars. Hitler also tried to conquer the whole world, and proclaimed a new German empire, the so-called Third Reich. As many preceding world rulers, guided by the Roman papacy, he tried to destroy the Jewish people who lived in Germany and all over Europe and the rest of the world. Nazis killed around 6,500,000 Jews in concentration camps in Germany and Croatia, as well as members of many other nations. After the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in America, USA joined the war in 1941 and contributed to victory of the Allied forces. One of the decisive battles occurred in 1944, after the so-called invasion of Normandy, also known as D-Day, when Allied forces defeated Germans in Western Europe on several occasions. Perhaps the greatest battle of the whole war was the Battle for Stalingrad, that lasted from 1942 to 1943, when Russians defeated the German army. This battle is considered to have been the turning point in the Second World War. Russia was renamed Soviet Union during those times, and was ruled by communist dictator Joseph Stalin, who was also infamous for concentration camps in Russia and killing of several millions of innocent people. The same was true for many other countries' rulers, such as China, Vietnam, Cambodia, and so on. The war ended in 1945, which was primarily remembered for atomic bombs attack on Japan by USA, which destroyed 2 cities, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, although it was not necessary to do such a thing, since the war was already over. The Allied forces won, but many of the Nazi leaders survived and lived until the end of the 20th century. Most of them were helped by Vatican and the Roman Catholic Church. After the Second World War, the race for world domination continued, and the whole period between 1947 and 1991 is known as the Cold War era. The 2 opponents were USA and Soviet Union. Although they did not start a new open world war between each other, they forced other countries to fight between each other for their causes. There were many more wars that took place all over the world. In Vietnam, Korea, Panama, Nicaragua, Cuba, and then Iraq, Kuwait, Afghanistan, Iran, Israel, Syria, Egypt, and so on. One of the major post-war events was the formation or the restoration of Israel in 1947, an event that was the cause of many future wars, including the modern-day war between Israel and Palestine. Even in the end of the 20th century and the beginning of the 21st century, there have been many wars of the same cause, such as war in Yugoslavia, that is the modern-day Serbia, Croatia, Macedonia, and Slovenia, then wars in Libya, Ukraine, Syria, Iran, and so on. Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, and it appeared as if USA became the sole military power of the world. The truth is that it was not simply USA, but a conglomeration of various international and world political unions and organizations, formed either immediately after the Second World War or a few decades later, such as the United Nations, NATO Alliance, European Union, and other continental unions, and so on. All of them still under the authority of either Roman papacy or of their opponents, ruled the whole world through politicians and rulers of other countries. There are still wars going on, and there will be more of them until they conquer the whole world, or if something extraordinary happens that could prevent such a disaster. All the countries of the modern world are uniting into a single world state, but the very near future will show what will happen. That would be all. Thank you for watching Edupedia World Video.